everybody, Charles from GMAT Ninja here. Today we're going to talk about all of the ways you can get yourself banned from taking the GMAT, get your score canceled, get your score put under review. Obviously the goal here is to make sure that those things don't happen to you. We hear stories every day from people who take the test not trying to cheat, not doing anything nefarious, who accidentally break a rule, something like bringing chapstick into the test center, or grabbing their phone during their break, or having somebody walk by during their at-home GMAT. We want to make sure that none of those things happen to you so you don't lose a perfectly good GMAT score. Now, as you watch this video, one thing I want you to be very, very aware of, usually if you see me yapping by myself into the camera, you're going to hear a lot of my opinions, a lot of my spin on things. That is absolutely not what's happening in this video. Everything you're going to hear about in this video comes from a whole ton of conversations with the folks who run GMAC's test security department. So people who are on the front lines, catching cheaters, unfortunately catching some people that break rules who are not trying to cheat as well. So this is information straight from them. For a lot of reasons, it was decided that it was better to keep them off camera. So everything you're hearing here is my very, very best attempt to tell you what they have told me and give you the unvarnished truth about how to avoid getting yourself into trouble with your GMAT exam. Okay, so what is test security and why is it something that we all should care about at least a little bit? So the idea behind test security is that everybody should have the exact same playing field, face the same standards when they take the exam so that nobody's out there cheating. And think of it this way, so if you're applying to business schools, you got your score totally fairly, but there's a couple applicants out there in that same applicant pool who cheated, got a higher score as a result. That's not fair to you, that really stinks. It's also not fair to schools because it makes it much harder for them to evaluate applicants fairly. So the point of test security is to make sure that really nobody can cheat and make it unfair for everybody else. Now, as we talk about the different rules and regulations and ways that you might get your score canceled or get yourself banned innocently, every one of those things comes from a way that somebody tried to cheat at some point. I love the example of chapstick because we've had students over the years who try to walk into their exam innocently bringing chapstick. Their score gets canceled, they get kicked out of the test center, whatever it might be. And the reason is somebody at some point somewhere tried to cheat with chapstick. So all of these rules and regulations come from somewhere. They're not arbitrary. They're ways to try to make sure that your score is totally fair because other people aren't cheating. Okay, so what are some of the most common ways that perfectly honest test takers who aren't trying to cheat end up getting themselves into trouble? So tons and tons of examples here of things that people have done to end up getting their scores canceled. I'm going to highlight 4 broad categories to start. First, you don't want to bring foreign objects into the testing room, whether you're taking the test at home or at the test center. Very, very few things are allowed to be in that testing room with you. Don't bring anything else. No chapstick. That's my favorite example because it is so innocent, but you can't bring a whole lot of other things in there either. So just pay attention to the rules. Don't bring anything that isn't explicitly allowed into your test room. Second, we're all hooked on our cell phones. You can't use your cell phone during your test, not even during your breaks. If you reach for it, even if it's off, you could get your score canceled. Third, you're not allowed to talk to people other than the proctor during your exam. Obviously, the proctors and the test security folks don't know if you're exchanging test information or if you're just saying hello to somebody in the hallway. So during your breaks, just make sure you're not exchanging pleasantries with anybody. Don't talk to anybody other than the proctors. Fourth, and this one can be really, really frustrating, admittedly, if there's a network outage of some sort, whether you're taking it at home or in the test center, sometimes that score ends up getting canceled. Obviously, that sort of thing is rarely your fault. But because the proctors and the test security folks don't know what's happening during that outing, sometimes your score can get canceled. So tons of other examples of these. Obviously, anything that is not allowed, it's because somebody tried to cheat by doing this thing. And if you want the comprehensive list, there is a handbook that will walk through all the things you can and can't do during your exam. It's a long document. It's about 30 pages long. We'll put a link to it in the video description. But if you want to make sure that you don't innocently do any of these things, go ahead and read through that, use it as a checklist, and make sure that you're going to be totally safe during your exam. Okay, so let's suppose that you got an email that said that your exam is under review. What does that mean? How worried should you be? Okay, guys, so most of the time when that happens, please don't panic. It really doesn't mean a whole lot. So it could be that there was something that the proctor flagged that they want to take another look at, and that's fine. So people will take a deeper look at your test, make sure that nothing nefarious was going on. Sometimes it's just a technical issue, something in the background that was going on, and they have to put your test under review. Might have absolutely nothing to do with you. And sometimes it's just a random audit. So sometimes they just audit these, your exam goes under review. Vast majority of the time, these tests that go under review, nothing happens, you're not gonna get your score canceled. So if you see that email come in, it just means people are taking a deeper look at it, might have nothing to do with you. So when you see it, please, please don't panic. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're in any sort of trouble yet. Okay, so let's say that things get even worse for you. You find out your score is canceled. So you might be wondering, how much trouble are you in? Are schools going to find out about it? Is it going to ruin your chances of admission if schools know that a score got canceled? So you guys are going to really like this. It turns out that 94% of the time, schools never even find out about a canceled score. So here's how it works. If that score gets canceled before the score is ever reported, schools never find out about it. It's just not on your record. That's it. That 6% of the time when scores are canceled that schools do find out about it, it's when something comes to light after the fact. A few weeks or a few months later, somehow GMAC finds out that you did something that was a violation of the rules, whether you did it on purpose or not, and that score has already been reported to schools. That's when it changes on your score report. The score disappears. It is now a canceled score. And the only thing schools will see at that point, they're not necessarily going to see any detail on what exactly you did or what happened. They're just going to see what type of violation you had. And that's it. And again, that only happens 6% of the time when scores are canceled that schools will ever know anything at all about it. Okay, so what's going on when we say that there are different violation levels that could appear on your score report? So if you're unfortunate enough to have your score canceled and you're one of those people who gets the score canceled after the fact, so it doesn't get canceled before the score is reported, it gets canceled after the score is reported. So that's when schools are going to see either a T, a P, or an S on the score report. So that T, what does that mean? That's a testing issue. Could be something that's technical, something small. Really what that indicates is that it wasn't any sort of nefarious behavior. It was something that was probably very innocent, and schools certainly aren't going to overreact to it. Second, you could get a P on there. P means policy violation. Now that might be something that's fairly significant. So for example, maybe you spoke to a stranger in the hallways during your break, or you grabbed your cell phone, or somebody walked into the room during your at-home test. Those are all things where you should have known better, you shouldn't have done that, maybe you should have read that policy document more carefully, et cetera, et cetera. Not necessarily nefarious behavior, but you were definitely committing a policy violation. That's a P. And generally speaking, your school's going to overreact to that. Not necessarily. And the third one is the bad one. That's an S, serious policy violation. So that's when, and I quote, you committed a reckless disregard for the sanctity of the exam or intentional nefarious behavior. So that's when you're pretty clearly trying to cheat. And hopefully if you're watching this, you're not going to do that. Okay, so what should you do if your score gets canceled and you don't think it's fair? Really simple answer to this one, guys. Please appeal that decision. You can email testsecurity@gmac.com and they'll take a look, and actual humans are going to read it. It's not an automated process. It's not AI. There are actual humans that will read your appeal, consider it carefully, consider the context of everything you're saying. Those humans that read it, I've talked to them. They're encouraging me to tell you to appeal if you think that decision is unfair. They want you to, and again, real humans will read this. It's in their interest to try to make sure that everybody is treated fairly. If somebody is cheating or getting an unfair advantage, they want that score canceled. If somebody isn't, ideally, they don't want your score canceled. So by all means, please, please appeal if you think you've been treated unfairly. All right, there have been rumors going around for decades that there are websites out there or companies out there that have actual official questions on the actual current GMAT, and you can find them online or you could buy them. So that doesn't seem fair. How's that a thing? Is it a thing? All right, so a couple things about that. First of all, to whatever extent there have ever been those questions just floating around the internet, people take the test, memorize questions, put them online. You're not going to believe this, but the test security people at GMAC also know how to use Google. So there's all sorts of procedures in place to find those questions when they do pop up on the internet and make sure the websites offering them to the public get shut down. Something else that does happen is there are companies out there that will offer to sell you what they say are actual official questions. Vast majority of the time, those questions are fake. And GMAC also has some really horrific stories about people who get blackmailed by those companies. So if somebody's offering to sell you those questions, just don't go down that road. A lot of bad things have happened to test takers when they try to do that. Now, if you do happen to run into some actual questions, so let's suppose you go take your exam and you're like, well, wait a minute, my tutor showed me these 3 questions I saw in my exam. You should probably contact test security right away. Email testsecurity@gmac.com. Why is that? If it's innocent, you didn't know they were real questions and you fess up, you're not going to get in a whole lot of trouble with it. But if they find out later, that's when you might get your score canceled after the fact, and that's where you get the more serious policy violations and schools can find out. So if on the off chance that happens to you, just make sure you report it right away and everything will be okay. All right, so we'll finish up this video with something that you didn't think I was going to say: GMAT financial crimes. So it turns out that people try to transfer fee waivers and vouchers from one person to another. So maybe you have a friend who took the exam and they ended up with a voucher because something went wrong and they decide not to take the exam. So they have this voucher and they say, hey, how about you use it? It entitles you to a free exam. It's wonderful. Maybe you pay for it, maybe you don't. Doesn't really matter. Here's the point, you can't use that thing. The reason is that those vouchers, those fee waivers are non-transferable. It has to come from GMAC or from a partner organization, and you cannot pass them from one test taker to another. So whatever you do, please don't use one of those if somebody offers you one, because it's something that often gets discovered after your exam. And so not only will your score get canceled, but it might actually appear in your score report because they usually find out about it after that score has been reported. Similarly, whatever you do, don't try to contest the charge on your credit card if you decide to pay for the exam and then later you say, well, I didn't like my score or something went wrong or whatever, and you try to contest that charge. That's theft because now you haven't paid for the exam and your score will get canceled. And once again, because that usually happens after the fact, it might show up on your score report. All right, guys, that's it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this tour through things you might do to get yourself in trouble with GMAC. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button, please hit the subscribe button. And if there's anything else you'd like to see in future videos, please let us know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, everybody.